You need to leave. Now." The words cut through the chaos of the emergency room like a blade, sharp and final. Lila Morgan looked up from the patient she was treating, her hand still pressed against the wound that would not stop bleeding, and found herself staring into eyes that seemed to glow in the harsh fluorescent light. The man standing in the doorway was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that filled the frame, and a presence that made every instinct in her body scream danger. But it was not fear that flooded through her. It was something else entirely. Something that made her skin feel too tight, and her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with the emergency unfolding around her. "I am working," she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. "I have a patient who is dying." The stranger moved into the room with a speed that should not have been possible for someone his size, and suddenly he was there, right beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "That patient is already dead," he said, and his voice was low, rough, like gravel and silk combined. "And if you do not come with me right now, you will be too." Lila wanted to argue. She wanted to tell this arrogant stranger that she had taken an oath, that she did not abandon her patients, that she did not take orders from men who barged into her hospital making threats. But then she heard it. The sound that would haunt her nightmares for weeks to come. A howl, deep and primal, echoing through the building from somewhere below. It was not a sound any dog could make. It was not a sound anything natural could make. The lights flickered. Glass shattered somewhere down the hall. And the man beside her, this stranger with eyes like molten amber, grabbed her wrist and pulled her away from the gurney with a strength that left no room for resistance. The cold night air hit her face like a slap as he dragged her through the emergency exit. And Lila stumbled on the concrete steps, her scrubs already soaked with blood that was not her own. "What is happening?" she gasped, trying to pull free from his grip. "What was that sound?" He did not answer. He simply kept moving, pulling her across the parking lot toward a black SUV that sat idling in the shadows. Behind them, the sound of breaking glass grew louder, followed by screams that made Lila's blood run cold. She turned to look back at the hospital, at the place where she had worked for 3 years, where she had saved lives and comforted the dying, and saw something that her mind refused to accept. Shadows moved behind the windows, massive shapes that were too large, too fast, too wrong. And then, one of them crashed through the glass on the second floor, landing on all fours in the parking lot with an impact that cracked the asphalt. It was not a bear. It was not a wolf. It was something caught between the two. Something that should not exist outside of fever dreams and old legends. The creature lifted its head, and even from 50 feet away, Lila could see its eyes fix on her with an intelligence that was terrifyingly human. "Get in the vehicle," the stranger said, and this time his voice carried a note of command that bypassed her conscious mind entirely. Lila got in the vehicle. She did not remember making the decision. Her body simply obeyed, sliding into the passenger seat as he rounded the front and climbed behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, and they were moving before she even had her seatbelt fastened, racing out of the parking lot as more of those impossible creatures emerged from the hospital behind them. They drove in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, heading up into the mountains on roads that grew progressively narrower and less maintained. Lila's hands were shaking. She pressed them together in her lap and tried to process what she had seen, tried to find some rational explanation that would make sense of the impossible. "They were werewolves," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That is insane. Werewolves are not real." The man beside her let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it had contained any humor. "You just saw 3 of them tear through a hospital hunting for you, and you are still trying to convince yourself they are not real?" Lila turned to stare at him, really look at him for the first time. He was younger than she had first thought. Maybe early 30s, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and a jawline that could have been carved from granite. He was beautiful in a way that made her uncomfortable, the kind of masculine perfection that did not exist in real life. Except, apparently it did. Because apparently werewolves existed, so why not impossibly attractive men who drove like they were being chased by demons? Why were they hunting for me? She asked. I am nobody. I am just a nurse. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, and she saw his knuckles go white. You are not just anything, he said, though you clearly do not know it yet. Before she could ask what that meant, he turned off the main road onto what was barely more than a dirt track, and the SUV bumped and jolted over roots and rocks as they climbed higher into the forest. The trees grew thicker here, blocking out the moonlight, and Lila felt a strange prickling sensation on the back of her neck, like they were being watched by 100 unseen eyes. They emerged into a clearing, and Lila's breath caught in her throat. The compound before them looked like something out of a fantasy novel, a collection of buildings that ranged from massive log structures to smaller cabins, all built with a rustic elegance that spoke of wealth and power. Lights glowed in windows, and she could see people moving between the buildings, dozens of them, all stopping to stare as the SUV pulled to a halt in front of the largest structure. The stranger killed the engine and turned to face her, and in the dim light from the dashboard, his eyes definitely glowed. It was not a trick of the light or her imagination. They actually glowed, a warm amber that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. My name is Cale Thornwood, he said. I am the Alpha King of the Northern Packs. You are on my territory now, under my protection. No one will harm you here. Lila swallowed hard. And if I want to leave? Something dark and possessive flashed across his face. There and gone so quickly she almost missed it. You are free to go whenever you wish, he said, and she had the distinct impression he was lying. But out there, the rogues who attacked the hospital are still hunting. They want you for reasons I do not yet understand. In here, you are safe. He opened his door and climbed out, and after a moment of hesitation, Lila followed. The moment her feet touched the ground, that strange prickling sensation intensified, and she felt something shift inside. Her chest, like a door opening that had been locked her entire life. Kyle was watching her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. You feel it, he said, and it was not a question. The pull of the territory. The recognition. Lila wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the mild night air. I do not know what I feel, she admitted, except terrified and confused, and like my entire understanding of reality just shattered. A woman appeared on the porch of the main building, tall and willowy with platinum blonde hair that fell in perfect waves past her shoulders. She was stunning in a way that made Lila acutely aware of her own blood-stained scrubs and disheveled appearance. The woman's eyes, ice blue and sharp as knives, assessed Lila with a single sweeping glance before dismissing her entirely and focusing on Cale. You brought a human here? The disdain in her voice was unmistakable. Cale, darling, have you lost your mind? The elders will be furious. Cale moved to stand between Lila and the woman, a gesture that felt protective and possessive at the same time. Lady Seraphina, he said, his voice formal and cold. This does not concern you. Seraphina descended the steps with the grace of a predator, her smile sharp and dangerous. Everything that concerns you concerns me, my love. Or have you forgotten our engagement? The word hit Lila like a physical blow, though she had no right to feel anything about this stranger's relationship status. She took a step back, suddenly wanting to be anywhere but here, caught between these two beautiful, terrifying people who existed in a world she did not understand. The engagement is political, Cale said, still not looking at Seraphina, his attention focused entirely on Lila. Nothing more. Seraphina's laugh was like crystal breaking. Political? Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? We have been promised to each other since we were children, Cale. Your father and mine arranged it. Before either of us could walk. You cannot simply decide it means nothing because you have brought home a human pet." The word pet made Lila's temper flare, cutting through her fear. "I am standing right here," she said, her voice sharp. "And I am not anyone's pet. I did not ask to be brought here. And if someone could please explain what is happening and why those things were hunting me, that would be wonderful." Serafina's eyes narrowed, and for just a moment, Lila saw something flicker in their depths, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "Oh, she has spirit," Serafina said softly. "How delightful. Tell me, little human, do you have any idea why the Alpha King himself would risk his life to pull you from that hospital? Do you think it is because you are special?" She moved closer, circling Lila like a shark scenting blood in the water. "Let me enlighten you. You are leverage. You are bait. Those rogues want you for something, and Kale brought you here to use you to draw them out. You are not a guest. You are a tool." Kale's growl was low and threatening, the sound vibrating through the clearing with enough force that Lila felt it in her bones. "Serafina, back. Off." The blonde woman held up her hands in mock surrender, but her smile remained cruel. "Of course, my king. I would not dream of upsetting your new toy. But you should know that the elders have called an emergency council meeting for tomorrow night. They have questions about your recent decisions. Questions I am quite eager to hear answered." She turned and walked back toward the main building, her hips swaying in a way that was clearly calculated for Kale's benefit. He did not watch her go. His attention remained fixed on Lila, and the intensity of his gaze made her want to both run away and step closer at the same time. "Is she right?" Lila asked quietly. "Am I bait?" Kyle was silent for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was rough with something that sounded almost like regret. "I do not know why the rogues want you," he said, "but I swear on my life that I will find out. And I swear that no one will hurt you while you are under my protection." It was not exactly a denial, but something in the way he said it made Lila want to believe him. A man emerged from one of the smaller buildings, older than Kyle, but with the same air of controlled power. His hair was silver, and his face was lined with the kind of scars that spoke of battles. "Survived. Alpha," he said with a slight bow. "I have prepared the guest quarters in the East Wing. Perhaps the young lady would like to rest and clean up." Lila looked down at herself and realized she was still covered in blood, her scrubs stiff with it in places where it had dried. The sight made her stomach turn. She had been so focused on surviving, on processing the impossible, that she had not even thought about the patient she had been treating when this nightmare began. "Did they make it?" she asked suddenly, looking at Kale. "The person I was working on when you pulled me out. Did they survive?" The sadness in his eyes was answer enough, but he said it anyway. "No. The rogues had already infected them. There was nothing you could have done." Infected. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Lila did not want to examine. She felt the weight of the night crash down on her all at once, the terror and confusion and grief threatening to pull her under. Her knees buckled, and before she could hit the ground, Kale was there, catching her with arms that felt like steel wrapped in silk. He lifted her effortlessly, cradling her against his chest, and the scent of him washed over her, pine and smoke, and something wild that made her wolf, the wolf she did not know she had, stir restlessly in her chest. "I have you," he murmured, and the words felt like a promise. "I have you." Lila wanted to protest, wanted to insist she could walk on her own, but her body had other ideas. Exhaustion pulled at her, and she found herself relaxing into his hold, her head resting against his shoulder as he carried her toward the main building. The interior was as impressive as the exterior, all exposed beams and stone fireplaces, with artwork that looked expensive and furniture that managed to be both rustic and elegant. Kyle carried her up a wide staircase and down a hallway to a room that was larger than her entire apartment back in town. He set her down, gently on the edge of a massive four-poster bed, and the loss of contact felt wrong in a way she could not explain. "There are clothes in the wardrobe," he said, gesturing toward a large wooden cabinet against the wall. "They should fit well enough. The bathroom is through that door. Take whatever time you need." He turned to leave, and Lila heard herself say, "Wait." He stopped, his back to her, every line of his body tense. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving me, even if I do not understand why." Cale looked back over his shoulder, and the expression on his face was so complex, so layered with emotions she could not begin to name, that it stole her breath. "You will understand soon enough," he said. "The full moon is in 3 days, and I suspect it is going to change everything." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Lila was left alone with her racing thoughts and the growing certainty that her life would never be the same. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Lila stripped off her ruined scrubs and stood under the hot water in the shower for what felt like hours, watching the blood swirl down the drain and trying to process everything that had happened. Werewolves were real. She had been attacked by creatures that should not exist, and she was apparently important enough that the Alpha King himself had risked his life to save her. The clothes in the wardrobe fit perfectly, which should have been comforting, but instead felt vaguely unsettling, like someone had been expecting her. She chose a soft pair of leggings and an oversized sweater, both in shades of gray that somehow felt appropriate for the surreal nightmare her life had become. She was exhausted, but knew sleep would not come easily, so she opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, intending to explore. The compound was quiet at this hour, though she could hear voices drifting up from somewhere below, low conversations in a language she did not recognize. She followed the sound down the stairs and found herself in a large common area where a handful of people sat around a fire, talking and laughing with an ease that spoke of long familiarity. They all stopped when they saw her, their eyes turning to assess her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. "You must be the human," a young woman said, rising from her seat by the fire. She was petite with dark curls and warm brown eyes that held no hostility, just genuine interest. "I am Nadia, beta female of the Northern Pack. Welcome to Thornwood territory." Lila managed a weak smile. "Thank you. I am Lila, though I am sure you already knew that." Nadia laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Come sit. You look like you could use some food and maybe a very strong drink." The others made room for her by the fire, and Lila found herself surrounded by people who looked human, but moved with a grace and coordination that suggested otherwise. They were werewolves, all of them, and yet they were treating her with a kindness she had not expected. A man brought her a plate of food, still warm from whatever kitchen produced meals at this hour, and Lila ate mechanically, not really tasting it, but knowing she needed the energy. "So," Nadia said once Lila had eaten enough to satisfy her, "how are you holding up? It is not every day you discover that monsters are real." Lila let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," she admitted. "This morning, my biggest worry was whether I could afford to get my car fixed. Now I am sitting in a compound full of werewolves, and apparently there are things out there that want me dead for reasons no one can explain." Nadia's expression softened with sympathy. "The Alpha will figure it out," she said with absolute confidence. "Cale is the strongest, smartest leader the Northern Packs have had in generations. If anyone can keep you safe and unravel this mystery, it is him." The way she said Cale's name, with such unwavering loyalty and respect, made Lila's chest tighten with an emotion she refused to examine. "He is engaged," Lila said, not sure why she felt the need to point that out. To Lady Seraphina. The mood around the fire shifted instantly, becoming tense and uncomfortable. Nadia and the others exchanged glances, and Lila got the distinct impression she had touched on something political and, complicated. That engagement is a matter of pack politics, an older man finally said, his voice careful. It was arranged to unite two powerful bloodlines and maintain peace between the northern and eastern territories. But it does not mean anyone is happy about it. Another woman, this one with striking red hair and sharp green eyes, snorted derisively. Seraphina is a viper, she said bluntly, beautiful and deadly and completely self-serving. She does not care about Kale or the pack. She cares about power and status. Nadia shot her a warning look, but the redhead just shrugged. What? It is the truth, and everyone knows it. The only person who does not seem to see it is Kale himself, and that is only because he is too honorable to break a promise his father made. Lila wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the complicated dynamics at play, but before she could form the question, she felt it. A pulling sensation in her chest, like a string attached to her sternum being tugged. Gently but insistently. She gasped and pressed her hand to her chest, and Nadia was instantly at her side, concern etched on her face. What is wrong? Are you in pain? Lila shook her head, unable to find words for what she was feeling. It was not pain exactly. It was more like recognition. Like some part of her that had been sleeping her entire life was waking up and reaching for something just beyond her grasp. The sensation grew stronger, more urgent, and without conscious thought she found herself standing and walking toward the source of the pull. The others followed her, worried voices asking questions she could not hear over the rushing in her ears. She walked through the compound like a woman in a trance, following invisible threads that led her to a building set slightly apart from the others, surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets in the darkness. The door was unlocked, and she pushed it open to find a training room, complete with mats and weapons mounted on the walls. And there, in the center of the space, moving through forms that were part martial art and part dance, was Kale. He was shirtless, his skin gleaming with sweat in the low light, and every movement showcased muscles that looked carved from stone. But it was not his physical perfection that held Lila frozen in the doorway. It was the way her entire body responded to the sight of him, like every cell was screaming recognition, like she had been waiting her entire life to find this man. In this moment, Kale stopped mid-movement and turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes could have melted steel. "You should not be here," he said, his voice rough and strained. "You should be resting." Lila took a step into the room, then another, pulled forward by that invisible string that connected her chest to his. "What is happening to me?" she asked. "Why do I feel like this? Like I cannot breathe when you are not nearby, like my skin is too tight and everything is too loud and too bright?" Kyle closed his eyes and took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, they were glowing brighter than before, the amber pulsing with an inner light that was hypnotic. "You are responding to the mate bond," he said quietly. "Even though you do not shift, even though you do not know what you are, your wolf recognizes mine, and she is calling to me." The words should have sounded insane. 24 hours ago, they would have sounded insane. But now, standing in this room with this man who made her feel things she had never felt before, they made perfect sense. "I do not have a wolf," Lila said, even as she felt that stirring in her chest again, that presence that was definitely not human. "I am not like you." Kyle moved toward her with that predatory grace, closing the distance between them until she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "I thought the same thing," he admitted. "When I first saw you in that hospital, I was certain you were human. I could not sense a wolf in you, could not smell pack on your skin. But the mate bond does not lie. My wolf knows you, recognizes you, even if I cannot understand how or why." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hand. His palm was warm and rough with calluses, and the touch sent electricity racing through her entire body. "I am promised to another," he said, and the pain in his voice was palpable. "I cannot break that promise without starting a war that would tear the Pax apart. But I also cannot deny what I feel when I am near you. It is tearing me apart." Lila leaned into his touch without thinking, her eyes closing as she savored the rightness of his hand on her skin. "Then what do we do?" she whispered. Kale's thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "We figure out why the rogues want you. We unravel the mystery of who and what you are. And we hope that the answers give us a way forward that does not end in bloodshed." He dropped his hand and stepped back, and the loss of contact felt like grief. "But for now, you need to rest. The council meeting is tomorrow night, and the elders will want to see you. They will have questions." Lila wanted to protest, wanted to close the distance between them again and damn the consequences, but she could see the rigid control in every line of his body, the way he was holding himself back through sheer force of will. So she nodded and turned to leave, forcing herself to walk away even, though every instinct screamed at her to stay. She was almost to the door when his voice stopped her. "Lila." She looked back, and the raw longing on his face stole her breath. "Sleep well," he said softly, "and know that I will spend the night keeping watch, ensuring nothing and no one gets past me to harm you." It was a promise and a confession all at once, and Lila carried it with her all the way back to her room, where she finally collapsed on the bed and let exhaustion claim her. Her dreams were filled with running through forests under a full moon, with the feeling of transformation and power coursing through her veins, and with amber eyes that watched her with a possessiveness that should have frightened her, but instead felt like coming home. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of voices arguing somewhere below. Lila dressed quickly in fresh clothes from the wardrobe and ventured downstairs, following the sound to a formal dining room where Kyle sat. At the head of a long table, Serafina to his right, and several older men and women arranged on either side. The conversation stopped the moment she appeared in the doorway, and all eyes turned to assess her. "Miss Morgan," one of the older men said, his voice cold and formal. "How convenient. We were just discussing your presence here." Kale's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Serafina cut in with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Please, join us. We were just debating whether keeping a human on Pack territory constitutes a security risk or a diplomatic incident. I am sure you have thoughts on the matter." Lila forced herself to walk into the room with her head held high, refusing to show the fear that churned in her stomach. "I did not ask to be brought here," she said evenly, "but I was told I would be safe. If my presence is such a problem, perhaps someone could explain why those creatures wanted to kill me in the first place." An older woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes leaned forward, studying Lila with an intensity that was uncomfortable. "That is an excellent question," she said. "One we would very much like answered. Tell me, child, what do you know of your parents? Your family history?" Lila frowned, confused by the question. "My parents died when I was 6, she said. "A car accident. I was raised by my grandmother, who passed away 5 years ago. There is not much to tell." The woman exchanged a glance with the others, and Lila saw something flicker across her face, something that looked almost like recognition. "And your grandmother, did she ever speak of the old ways? Of legends or stories about your family's origins?" Lila thought back, trying to remember conversations from her childhood. Her grandmother had told her stories, yes, but they had seemed like fairy tales at the time, nothing more. "She used to tell me about moon dancers," Lila said slowly. "Women in our family line who were blessed by the moon goddess, but they were just stories, make-believe." The silence that followed was deafening. Cale had gone very still, his eyes fixed on Lila with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Serafina looked furious, her perfect composure cracking to reveal the rage beneath. And the elders, all of them, were staring at Lila like she had just announced she could fly. Moon dancers, the silver-haired woman repeated softly. The Luna blessed. We thought that bloodline was extinct, hunted to extinction centuries. Ego by those who feared their power. Another elder, this one a man with a heavily scarred face, shook his head. It is impossible. The last of the Luna Blessed died in the Great Purge. There have been no confirmed sightings in over 300 years. The girl must be mistaken. But the silver-haired woman was still studying Lila, and her expression held a mixture of awe and concern that made Lila's skin prickle with unease. There is one way to know for certain, she said. The ceremony of revelation. If she truly carries Luna blessed blood, it will manifest when she is exposed to the power of the full moon in a sacred circle. Cale stood abruptly, the movement so sudden that several people flinched. Absolutely not, he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. The ceremony of revelation has not been performed in generations. It is dangerous, potentially fatal if the subject is not properly prepared. I will not risk her life on speculation. Serafina laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. How noble of you, Cale. But if the girl truly is Luna blessed, then she is far too important to be hidden away for her own protection. The bloodline was hunted for a reason. They had power that rivaled the Alphas themselves, power that could reshape the balance between the packs. Lila felt like she was drowning, struggling to keep up with revelations that were coming too fast. What does any of this mean? She asked, her voice sharper than she intended. What is Luna? Blessed. What power are you talking about? The silver-haired woman rose from her seat and moved around the table to stand before Lila, her eyes kind but serious. The Luna Blessed were women born with a direct connection to the moon goddess herself, she explained. They could heal with a touch, command lesser wolves with their will, and their presence made the packs they belonged to stronger, more unified. But they were also dangerous to those who sought power through division and conflict. So, they were systematically hunted and killed, their bloodline supposedly wiped from existence. She reached out and took Lila's hand, and the moment their skin touched, Lila felt something surge through her, bright and powerful and utterly foreign. The woman gasped and pulled back, her eyes wide. It is true, she breathed. I can feel it in her. Dormant, suppressed, but definitely there. She is Luna Blessed. The room erupted into chaos, everyone talking at once, arguing about what this meant and what should be done. But Lila could not focus on any of it. She was too busy trying to understand what was happening to her body. The stirring in her chest had become a roar, something wild and powerful demanding to be released. Her skin felt like it was burning, her bones aching with a pain that was both terrible and exhilarating. Kyle, she gasped, reaching for him instinctively. He was there instantly, his arms around her, supporting her weight as her knees buckled. I have you, he murmured. Hold on, just hold on. But Lila could not hold on. Whatever had been sleeping inside her for 28 years was waking up, and it would not be denied. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Light exploded behind her eyes, silver and brilliant and absolutely blinding. She heard herself scream, heard Cale shouting orders, heard the chaos around them as the elders scrambled to respond. And then everything went dark. When Lila opened her eyes again, she was lying on the bed in her room, with Nadia sitting beside her and Cale pacing like a caged animal near the window. Her body felt different, lighter somehow, like she had shed a weight she had not known she was carrying. What happened? She asked, her voice hoarse. Nadia smiled, relief flooding her features. You had what we call an awakening, she explained. Your wolf, which has been suppressed your entire life, started to surface. Kyle managed to calm the transformation before it could complete, but it was close. Lila turned her head to look at Kyle, who had stopped pacing and was now staring at her with an expression she could not read. "How long was I out?" she asked. 6 hours, Kyle said quietly. "The elders have been debating what to do with you ever since. Half of them want to perform the ceremony of revelation immediately. The other half think you should be sent away for your own protection." Lila sat up slowly, testing her body and finding that while she felt drained, she was not in pain. "And what do you think should be done?" she asked. Kale was silent for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. "I think you should have a choice," he said. "Something no one else seems interested in giving you. You did not ask for any of this. You did not ask to be Luna blessed, or to have rogues hunting you, or to be caught up in pack politics. So I am asking you, what do you want, Lila?" It was such a simple question, but the weight of it settled over her like a blanket. What did she want? She wanted answers. She wanted to understand what was happening to her. And despite the danger, despite the complexity and the impossibility of it all, she wanted to stay near the man who made her feel more alive than she had ever felt in her entire life. "I want to know the truth," she said finally, "about who I am, what I am, and why those rogues wanted me. And if that means doing this ceremony of revelation, then I will do it." Kale closed his eyes, and she saw his hands clench into fists at his sides. "The ceremony is dangerous," he said. "If your wolf is not ready, if the Luna blessed power is too strong or too dormant, it could kill you." Lila met his gaze steadily. "Then you will just have to make sure that does not happen." Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face, and for a moment, she thought he might argue. But then he nodded, a short, sharp movement of acceptance. "The full moon is in 2 nights, he said. "That gives us time to prepare you, to teach you some control over the wolf that is waking inside you. But Lila, you need to understand something. Once you undergo the ceremony of revelation, once the truth of what you are becomes public knowledge, everything will change. There will be those who want to use you, those who want to destroy you, and those who will see you as a threat to the established order." He moved to the bed and knelt beside it, bringing himself to eye level with her. "I am one of those threats," he said quietly. "Because if you are truly my mate, if the bond I feel is real and recognized by the goddess herself, then my engagement to Seraphina becomes impossible to honor. And that could start a war." Lila reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "Then we will face that war together," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Kale turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm, the gesture so tender and intimate that it stole her breath. "You have no idea what you are saying yes to," he murmured against her skin. "But I swear to you, on my life and my honor as Alpha, that I will protect you through whatever comes, even if it costs me everything." The next 2 days passed in a blur of activity. Kyle assigned Nadia to teach Lila the basics of controlling the shift, though they both knew it was unlikely she would fully transform before the ceremony. But even learning to recognize the wolf inside her, to feel the edges of that power without letting it overwhelm her, was progress. Lila spent hours in the training room, working through meditation exercises that were supposed to help her center herself, and physical conditioning that left her exhausted and aching. She also spent time with the elders, answering endless questions about her family history and the stories her grandmother had told her. It became clear that the Luna blessed bloodline had not been as extinct as everyone believed, but rather had gone into hiding, suppressing their power and passing down only vague stories to their descendants. Lila's grandmother had known what she was, had known what Lila could become, and had spent her life protecting that secret. It made Lila's heart ache to think of the burden her grandmother had carried, the fear that must have haunted her every day. And through it all, Cale was there, watching over her with an intensity that was both comforting and overwhelming. He did not touch her again, did not cross that line they had approached in the training room, but his presence was constant, a steady anchor in the chaos of her new reality. Serafina, on the other hand, made her displeasure known at every opportunity. She appeared at meals, always perfectly composed, always with some subtle barb or observation designed to undermine Lila's confidence. She questioned Lila's motives, her worthiness, her very existence in the compound. And while Cale shut her down every time, Lila could see the toll it was taking on him, the weight of trying to honor a promise while being pulled toward something his very soul demanded. On the morning of the full moon, Lila woke to find a package on her dresser. Inside was a dress, simple but beautiful, made of white silk that shimmered like moonlight. There was a note tucked inside, written in an elegant hand. For the ceremony, may the goddess guide you and keep you safe. Elder Moira. Lila held the dress up to the light and felt tears prick her eyes. Whatever happened tonight, whatever she discovered about herself, would change everything. There would be no going back to her old life, her old understanding of the world. By the time the sun set, she would either be dead or transformed into something entirely new. She dressed carefully, braiding her dark hair back from her face and leaving her feet bare as the instructions had specified. When she emerged from her room, Nadia was waiting to escort her to the sacred circle, a clearing deep in the forest where the ceremony would take place. The pack had gathered in a ring around the clearing, silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. The elders stood at the cardinal points, their faces solemn and ceremonial. And in the center, beside a raised stone altar covered in ancient symbols, stood Cale. He looked like a king from legend, dressed in black with a silver torque around his neck that marked his status as Alpha. When his eyes found hers, the intensity in them nearly brought her to her knees. This was it, the moment of truth. Lila walked into the circle with her head held high, refusing to show the fear that threatened to choke her. Elder Moira stepped forward and took her hand, leading her to the altar. "Lila Morgan," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing. "You stand before the goddess on this sacred night, seeking revelation of your true nature. Do you come of your own free will, understanding the risks and accepting the consequences of what may be revealed?" Lila's voice was steady when she answered. "I do." Moira nodded and gestured for Lila to lie down on the altar. The stone was cold against her back, and she could feel the carvings beneath her, centuries of power and ritual worn into the rock. The moon was rising, just cresting the trees, and its light fell across her like a physical weight. The elders began to chant, their voices weaving together in a language Lila did not recognize but that resonated in her bones. The pack joined in, their voices creating a harmony that was beautiful and terrible at the same time. And as the moon climbed higher, as its light grew stronger, Lila felt something inside her crack open like an egg. The pain was indescribable. It felt like every cell in her body was being torn apart and rebuilt, like fire and ice were racing through her veins, like the very fabric of her being was being rewritten. She screamed, unable to contain the agony, and heard Cale's answering roar of fury and fear. He was trying to get to her. She could sense it, but the elders were holding him back, insisting the ceremony could not be interrupted. The wolf inside her rose up, no longer a whisper or a stirring, but a full-fledged presence that demanded acknowledgement. And with it came power, so much power that Lila could feel it radiating from her skin, could see the silver light that was pouring from her body and illuminating the entire clearing. The chanting grew, louder, more urgent, and Lila felt herself being pulled in two directions at once. Part of her wanted to surrender to the transformation, to let the wolf take over completely. But another part, the part that was still human, Still, Lila fought to maintain control. She could not lose herself. She would not. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. With a final surge of will, Lila forced the two halves of herself together, human and wolf merging, into something that was neither and both at the same time. The light exploded outward, and she felt the moment everything changed. When the light finally faded and Lila could see again, she was standing in the center of the circle, no longer on the altar. Her body felt different, stronger, more alive than it had ever been. And she could see things she had never been able to see before. Auras around the pack members, the threads of power that connected them, the way the very air hummed with energy. She turned to find Kale, and the moment their eyes met, the mate bond snapped into place with a force that drove her to her knees. It was not the gentle pull she had felt before. It was a steel cable, unbreakable and absolute, connecting her soul to his in a way that transcended reason or choice. She could feel his emotions as if they were her own, could sense his wolf recognizing hers with a joy that was almost painful in its intensity. Impossible, Elder Moira breathed, staring at Lila with wide eyes. She is not just Luna Blessed, she is the Luna Reborn. The goddess herself has touched her. The pack erupted into chaos, some dropping to their knees in reverence, others shouting questions or accusations. But Lila could not focus on any of it. All she could see was Kale. All she could feel was the bond between them, pulling her toward him with inexorable force. He moved through the crowd like a force of nature, and when he reached her, he pulled her into his arms with a desperation that spoke of barely controlled fear. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands running over her as if checking for injuries. "Lila, talk to me. Are you all right?" She wanted to answer, but words felt inadequate for what she was experiencing. Instead, she pressed her hand over his heart and let him feel what she was feeling through the bond, the wonder and terror and absolute certainty that they were meant to be together. Kale's eyes widened, and she knew he could feel it too. The bond. Fully manifested and impossible to deny. "Mate," his wolf growled, the word rumbling through his chest. "Mine." And then Serafina was there, shoving through the crowd with fury written across her perfect features. "No," she snarled. "This is not possible. You are promised to me, Kale. Our engagement was sanctioned by the moon goddess herself. This human cannot be your mate." But Lila was no longer human, and they both knew it. The power radiating from her was unmistakable, marking her as something rare and precious, and infinitely more important than a political alliance. Elder Moira stepped forward, her expression grave. "The goddess has spoken," she said formally. "Lila Morgan is revealed as the Luna Reborn, carrier of the ancient bloodline, and true mate to Alpha King Kale Thornwood. By sacred law, the mate bond supersedes all other promises and commitments. The engagement between Alpha Kale and Lady Serafina is hereby dissolved." Serafina's scream of rage echoed through the clearing, and for a moment, Lila thought she might actually attack. But Kyle moved to stand between them, his posture protective, and his expression brooking no argument. "It is done, Serafina," he said quietly. "I am sorry for the pain this causes, but I will not deny what the goddess herself has decreed. Lila is my mate, and I will not let anyone, including you, threaten her." Serafina's eyes narrowed to slits, and when she spoke, her voice was cold as ice. "This is not over," she said. "My family will not accept this humiliation. The Eastern Pax will not accept it. You have just started a war, Kale, and that human bitch will be the first casualty." Kale's growl was low and dangerous, the sound of an alpha on the edge of violence. "If you threaten my mate again, Serafina, engagement or not, I will consider it an act of war. And trust me when I say you do not want that fight." Serafina glared at them both for a long moment, then turned and stalked away, her supporters following. behind her like a funeral procession. The remaining pack members looked uncertain, caught between reverence for what Lila had become and fear of the political consequences. Elder Moira cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. "The ceremony is complete," she announced. "The Luna Reborn has awakened, and the sacred bond has been recognized. We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss what this means for the pack and our alliances. But for tonight, let us celebrate the miracle we have witnessed." It was a clear dismissal, and the pack slowly dispersed, murmuring amongst themselves and casting curious glances at Lila. When they were finally alone, just Lila and Kyle standing in the clearing under the full moon, he pulled her close and rested his forehead against hers. "I was so scared," he admitted quietly. "When you screamed, when I could feel your pain through the bond, I thought I was going to lose you before I even truly had you." Lila wrapped her arms around him, marveling at how perfectly they fit together, how right it felt to be in his embrace. "I am here," she said softly, "and I am not going anywhere. Whatever we have to face, whatever consequences come from this, we will face them together." Cale pulled back enough to look at her, and the expression on his face was so full of love and wonder that it took her breath away. "You are magnificent," he said. "Stronger than you know, braver than you have any right to be, and you are mine." Possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her, but instead, it sent heat flooding through her body, the mate bond singing with approval. "Then claim me," she whispered, the words coming from some primal part of her that knew exactly what it wanted. "Show me what it means to be yours." Cale's eyes flared with heat, and she felt his control waver. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough. "Once I claim you, there is no going back. We will be bound in every way possible, soul and body, for the rest of our lives." Lila answered by pulling his head down and kissing him with all the pent-up desire and emotion that had been building between them since that first moment in the hospital. He made a sound deep in his chest, half growl, half groan, and then he was kissing her back with a desperation that matched her own. His hands roamed over her body, learning her curves, claiming every inch of her as his. And when he finally pulled back, his eyes were glowing so brightly they lit up the darkness around them. "Not here," he said, his voice barely recognizable. "Not in the open where anyone could interrupt. You deserve better for your claiming." He swept her up into his arms and carried her through the forest, moving with supernatural speed until they reached a cabin she had not seen before, set deep in the woods and surrounded by protective wards that hummed with power. Inside was a single room, dominated by a large bed covered in furs and soft fabrics. Kyle laid her down gently and stood back, giving her one last chance to change her mind. "Tell me you want this," he said. "Tell me you are sure." Lila sat up and reached for him, pulling him down onto the bed beside her. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," she said. "I want you, Cale. All of you. Now and forever." That was all the permission he needed. He claimed her thoroughly, tenderly, showing her with every touch and kiss exactly how precious she was to him. And when he finally marked her, his teeth sinking into the junction of her neck and shoulder in the traditional claiming bite, Lila felt the bond between them solidify into something unbreakable and eternal. She marked him in return, her newly awakened wolf giving her the strength and instinct to complete the ritual, and when it was done, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard and overwhelmed by the intensity of what they had just shared. "I love you," Cale said quietly, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her skin. "I did not think I was capable of this kind of feeling, but you changed everything. You are everything." Lila turned in his arms and kissed him softly. "I love you too," she said. "And I do not care what we have to face or who we have to fight. As long as we are together, we can handle anything." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. the mate bond humming contentedly between them. Two souls finally joined as they were always meant to be. When Lila woke the next morning, it was to raised voices outside the cabin. She dressed quickly and found Cale already up, standing at the window with a tent set to his shoulders. "What is wrong?" she asked, moving to stand beside him. He turned to her, and the grim expression on his face made her stomach drop. "Serafina has made good on her threat," he said quietly. "She returned to the Eastern Territory last night and convinced her father to declare war. The Eastern Pacts are mobilizing as we speak, and they are demanding that I renounce you and honor the engagement or face total annihilation." Lila felt ice spread through her veins. "Cale, I cannot let you start a war for me. There has to be another way." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with fierce protectiveness. "There is no other way," he said firmly. "I will not renounce you. I will not give you up. If they want war, then war they will get." Elder Moira appeared at the door, her expression troubled. "Alpha, the council is convening. We need to discuss strategy." Cale nodded and turned to Lila. "Stay here. The cabin is warded and you will be safe. I will return as soon as I can." But Lila shook her head. "No. If this is about me, then I should be there. I am not going to hide while others decide my fate." She could see him want to argue, but something in her expression made him reconsider. "Very well," he said. "But you stay by my side, and you do exactly as I say if things become dangerous. Agreed?" Lila agreed, and they walked together to the main building, where the council was already assembled. The atmosphere was tense, with warriors standing guard at every entrance, and scouts running in and out with updates on the Eastern Pact's movements. The debate raged for hours, with some arguing for immediate military response, and others counseling caution and diplomacy. But through it all, one thing became clear. The Eastern Pacts were not just angry about the broken engagement. They were terrified of what Lila represented, of the power she could wield as the Luna reborn. If she chose to ally fully with the Northern Pacts, she could shift the balance of power dramatically. And if she chose to remain neutral or worse, to oppose them, they would be vulnerable in ways they had not been in centuries. It was not about Serafina's wounded pride, or even about the political alliance. It was about power and control, and the age-old fear of anything that could not be dominated or destroyed. As the sun began to set on the second day of deliberations, a messenger arrived bearing a formal challenge. Serafina's father, Alpha Marcus of the Eastern Pacts, was demanding a trial by combat. Kyle versus a champion of their choosing, with Lila's fate and the question of war hanging in the balance. The council erupted into arguments again, but Kyle's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "I accept," he said simply. "Name the time and place." Elder Moira looked stricken. "Kale, you cannot be serious. This could be a trap, a way to eliminate you and leave the Northern Pacts vulnerable." But Kale was unmoved. "It is the oldest law we have. A challenge issued must be answered, or I forfeit my right to rule. I will not let them use my refusal as an excuse to paint me as weak or cowardly." He turned to Lila, and the love in his eyes nearly broke her. "I am going to win," he said with absolute certainty. "And then we are going to end this war before it truly begins. Trust me." Lila wanted to argue, wanted to beg him not to risk his life, but she could see the determination in every line of his body. This was about more than just her. It was about his honor, his duty as Alpha, and his right to choose his own mate. So she nodded and stepped into his embrace, holding him tight. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Please." Kale pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Always," he promised. "I will always come back to you." The trial by combat was set for the next full moon, 1 month away. It gave Kale time to prepare, to train, and to set his affairs in order in case the worst should happen. But Lila refused to consider that possibility. She spent the month learning to harness her new powers, working with Elder Moira to understand the extent of what being Luna Reborn meant. She discovered she could heal with a touch, that she could sense emotions and intentions in those around her, and that her presence had a calming effect on the pack, strengthening their bonds and resolve. She also learned that the Luna Blessed had not just been healers and peacemakers. They had been warriors when necessary, capable of channeling the moon's power into devastating attacks against those who threatened their people. It was a side of her heritage that both terrified and empowered her, the knowledge that she was not helpless, that she could fight to protect what mattered. When the night of the combat finally arrived, Lila stood at Kale's side as they traveled to neutral territory, a sacred ground where pack disputes had been settled for centuries. The Eastern packs were already there, hundreds of them, with Seraphina at the front looking triumphant and cruel. The champion they had chosen was a massive wolf named Darius, known for his brutality and lack of mercy in combat. He was easily the largest wolf Lila had ever seen, all muscle and rage and barely contained violence. But Kale showed no fear. He stripped off his shirt and stepped into the fighting circle, his own wolf rising to the surface until his eyes glowed, and his body radiated power. The fight was brutal and bloody. Two apex predators locked in combat with everything on the line. Lila watched with her heart in her throat, every blow Kale took feeling like it landed on her own body through the mate bond. But she also felt his determination, his absolute refusal to lose, and she poured every ounce of her own strength through the bond, supporting him in the only way she could. The turning point came when Darius managed to land a devastating blow that sent Kale crashing to the ground. The Eastern packs cheered, certain of their victory. But Kale rose, blood streaming from multiple wounds, and the look in his eyes was pure Alpha King, ancient and terrible, and utterly unstoppable. He transformed fully, his wolf larger and more powerful than anyone had seen him manifest before, and when he lunged at Darius, it was with a speed and ferocity that ended the fight in seconds. Darius went down hard, his throat in Kale's jaws, and for a moment, Lila thought Kale might actually kill him. But instead, he held the position until Darius submitted, the ultimate humiliation for a warrior who had never yielded in combat. Kyle released him and transformed back, standing bloodied but victorious in the center of the circle. "It is done," he said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "The challenge is met and won. By sacred law, Lila Morgan is recognized as my true mate, and any who dispute that right will face me in combat." Alpha Marcus stepped forward, his face twisted with fury, and for a moment, Lila thought he might reject the outcome and demand another trial. But then Lila felt something surge through her, a compulsion that came from the deepest part of her Luna Reborn nature. She stepped into the circle and let the power flow out of her, silver light radiating from her skin and illuminating the entire gathering. When she spoke, her voice was not entirely her own, carrying the weight of the moon goddess herself. "Enough," she said, and the word resonated with divine authority. The old ways of division and conflict serve no one. The Luna Blessed were given to the packs not to choose sides but to unite them, to remind you that you are all children of the same goddess, all worthy of love and protection. She turned to address both sides, northern and eastern alike. "I am Kale Thornwood's mate, chosen by fate and blessed by the goddess. But I am also Luna Reborn, and that means I belong to all packs, not just one. I offer you peace, Alpha Marcus, an alliance built not on marriage or political maneuvering, but on mutual respect and the understanding that we are stronger together than divided." The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye was fixed on Lila, and she could feel the weight of their hope and fear and desperate desire for something better than endless conflict. Alpha Marcus studied her for a long moment, then looked at Kale, who had moved to stand beside her despite his injuries. You would share the Luna Reborn's gifts with the Eastern Pax? He asked, suspicion evident in his voice. Even after we challenged you, threatened war? Kale's arm came around Lila's waist, a gesture of both support and possession. If it brings lasting peace, yes, he said. But understand this. Lila is my mate first and foremost. I will kill anyone who tries to use her or harm her, alliance or not. Alpha Marcus's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Fair enough. He turned to Serafina, who looked like she had been carved from ice, and his expression hardened. You will apologize to the Luna Reborn for your disrespect and threats. You will acknowledge Kale's right to choose his mate. And you will accept the peace she offers with grace and dignity. For a moment, Lila thought Serafina might refuse. But under her father's stern gaze and the watching eyes of both packs, she had no choice. She stepped forward and executed a stiff, shallow bow. I apologize for my behavior, she said, each word sounding like it was being dragged from her. I acknowledge the sacred mate bond and accept the offered peace. It was the bare minimum of contrition, and everyone knew it, but it was enough. Elder Moira stepped forward and raised her hands, calling for the attention of all assembled. Let it be recorded that on this night, under the witness of the Moon Goddess, the Northern and Eastern Pacts have chosen peace over war, unity over division. The Luna Reborn has returned to guide us into a new era. The Pacts erupted into cheers, the tension that had been building for weeks finally breaking in a wave of relief and celebration. Kyle pulled Lila close and kissed her, uncaring of the audience or the blood still staining his skin. You are incredible, he murmured against her lips. My mate, my Luna, my everything. Lila smiled and touched his face gently. We should get you healed, she said. You are bleeding all over me. He laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. A small price to pay for keeping you safe. They returned to Thornwood territory that night, accompanied by representatives from the Eastern Pacts who would stay to work out the details of the new alliance. It would take time, Lila knew, for old wounds to heal and new trust to be built. But for the first time in centuries, there was real hope for lasting peace. Over the following months, Lila settled into her role as both Luna to the Northern Pack and mediator between all the territories. She discovered that her gifts extended beyond healing and empathy. She could sense threats before they materialized, could strengthen the bonds between pack members, and could even communicate directly with the Moon Goddess in her dreams. Kale was by her side through all of it, supporting her, protecting her, and loving her with an intensity that never faded. They were officially mated in a ceremony that brought together wolves from every territory, a celebration that lasted 3 days and marked the beginning of a new chapter in pack history. Serafina eventually found her own mate, a powerful alpha from the Western Territories, and while she and Lila would never be friends, they learned to coexist with professional courtesy. The rogues who had attacked the hospital were eventually tracked down and dealt with, their plot to kidnap Lila revealed as an attempt to use her Luna-blessed blood for dark rituals that would have given them unnatural power. Standing on the balcony of her and Kale's private quarters one evening, watching the full moon rise over the forest, Lila reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been a nurse who believed werewolves were fiction. Now she was the Luna Reborn, mate to an Alpha King, and bridge between supernatural nations. Penny for your thoughts? Kale's voice came from behind her, and she leaned back into his embrace as his arms wrapped around her waist. Just thinking about how far we have come, she said, softly. How everything changed the night you walked into that hospital. Kyle pressed a kiss to her temple. Best decision I ever made, he murmured. Even when I thought you were just a human who needed protecting, I could not stay away. My wolf knew, even when I did not understand. Lila turned in his arms and looked up at him. This man who had risked everything for her, who had fought for their right to be together against impossible odds. I love you, she said simply. Now and always. Kale's smile was tender and fierce at the same time. And I love you, my Luna. My mate. My miracle. They stood together under the moon, two souls bound by destiny and choice. Their love a beacon of hope for all the packs and proof that sometimes the most powerful magic of all is simply finding the person you are meant to be with. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? The story that had begun with terror and confusion ended with love and triumph, exactly as it was always meant to.